Many of you have heard the word hydro sapien that I've used, and I think we are more aptly called hydro sapiens than homo sapiens as water beings. And the word sapien means wise. It's time for us to become water wise. And with that, we have one of the wisest beings that I know of on this planet, Dolf Zantinge, who is truly water wise. And Dolf, before we get into our chat together, I'd love for you to share about you and your experience in the world of business and how you went from being so focused in all the realms of business and your success there to water, and why water. So let's start off with that, please.
Okay, well, thank you, Stuart. By the way, Isabel, thank you for your introduction. Wonderful, really beautiful. Yes, I'm pleased to do that. I'll tell you a little bit about my working life. I worked for many, many years in the industry of telco and in the computer science. That was a long time ago, but I had my own company over there, and I was one of the first people in the world, together with my colleague, who introduced artificial intelligence in the world. So we wrote books about it, and we were introduced to IBM to support them in that specific area. So we taught them all the tricks and the things that they do now. And I was quite familiar with database technology. I moved on in the telco, and in the telco world, I was quite successful. I was at a certain time frame. I was CEO of a big company, and I had around 1,200 employees. But then I moved to the world of fiber optics, and that made a small change. Fiber optics is used in the telco world, but there you work with light and laser light. And since I was a young man, I was always studying yoga, and I was very close connected to some people in India in that respect. And I was one of the people who was initiated by the group of Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda and Kriya Yoga. So I was quite often there in India, and I was always influenced by the fact that you also had to look at energies. And suddenly with fiber optics, you work with energies, you work with light. And at that moment of time, I met a lot of other people, and they were quite concerned about the situation in the world. And then I thought, can we measure certain things in light? And then, lucky enough, just at that moment of time, I met the people around Professor Popp in Germany, who was world famous in the world of biophotons. And I did some tests there, and I gave some recommendations over there. And then we took over the complete laboratory. And then we did a lot of tests, but after 1 year, we found out that there is one mystical product that seems to change everything. And that product was water. With water, we saw that is a very, very important product. So it was very simple. We took contact with a lot of people all over the world who claim to be water scientists. And we asked them, can you tell us a little bit about water? And the answer was very simple. They said, no, we haven't got a clue. And we said, well, why don't you tell us something more about water? So we met a lot of people, including people like Luc Montagnier, the Nobel Prize winner, who also moved to water, and also saw that it is very, very profound, an element. It's not a simple element. It is an element with a whole mystery around it. So we changed our laboratory, and with a whole team of scientists that was financed completely by ourselves, around 10, 15 people, worked for 14 years on this. And then we found out all the things that we wanted to learn. And now water is still a mystery, but we found out a lot of things, and we found the beauty of it. And so I skipped my role as CEO, and I moved completely in the role of the water world. That is more or less the story, Stuart.
Thank you. Yeah, that's beautiful. It's romantic, your own story and your intimacy with water. With your background in technology, Isabel referred to about water being the recorder of all events of time. Could you share with us some, from more of, I'll call it a technical basis, about water being a computer, recording bits and bytes.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a whole discussion in the scientific world going on. Is water having a memory? And some claim it has memory, and then the hardcore scientists say, no, it can't have a memory because memory is only humans have a memory, etc., etc. Well, so it's very simple. You do some tests, and you, for instance, you bring a color into the water, and you can see, does it have a certain effect in the biological world? And if you bring in a certain color, can you repeat it? Just as an example. But you can also put in a frequency in it, the radio frequency. And then you can look to the effect, and you can also measure the effect. And what we found is, yes, there is a memory in water, but it is not a memory as we have as humans. What it might have is that it creates different types of crystal forms, and they can communicate with outside fields that we are not aware of, probably with the fifth element ether. So that crystalline form is a kind of form that has the ability to communicate. We are still in the kindergarten of that knowledge. But water is so amazing, it has the ability to change in a flash of a second to the outside world, and it can keep that memory, let's call it a memory, for a long period. That has a tremendous impact. Because I give you one example. If water can be absorbed by electromagnetic fields all over the world. And what is an electromagnetic field? I don't want to make it too technical, but the sun and the moon are electromagnetic fields. And everybody knows we have high tide, low tide, and the sun can heat up the water, and that affects the water. But that is not the only thing. Water can change in its crystalline form due to certain electromagnetic waves that come from outside. In India, they knew that already for thousands of years. I don't know if you have ever heard, Stuart, from the Kumbh Mela. That is one of the biggest festivals in the world in India. 100 million people come there once in every 12 years. And all the yogis from the Himalayas come to take out the karma and to take a bath in the river. And that can only be done in the water on a specific date when there is specific frequencies from the outside world. And this is seen as one of the most holy things that can take place in India. And they knew that at that moment of time, certain frequencies are structured in the water, and that does everything. Because we forgot as humans that 99% of our molecules in the body are water molecules. We have more water molecules than a cucumber.
That's great.
So our memory is filled with it. So all our emotions are also stored in our water. All those things, everything, all our traumas are called into that water base, into our system as well. And that is why drinking good water, or water that has a certain positive effect, can take out all those negative energies into the body as well. That is why this memory, the knowledge of memory, is very critical.
So you spoke about the crystal and the crystal structures.
Yes.
And I'd like you to talk about, coming back to the technology side again, about crystals. The first, communication tools were crystals, right? That were in radios and in TVs. Because you understand the technology side, could you talk about that, crystals, and how they communicate, how they transfer, receive information, and how water does the same?
It's very important what you say now, Stuart, because crystals were built in the first radios. Why is that? Because a crystal form can receive a frequency from outside. And that is exactly what water does. And I can tell you a little bit of the test that we did. We gave plants different types of water, and also what we called coherent water, whereby the structure has the ability to receive more information from outside. And we gave all those plants water, and we measured them with micro voltage, very low voltage in the roots and in the plant itself and in the leaves, everything, hundreds of them. And what we saw is that every day we saw 1 hour before the sun was rising and energy coming up. But every day that hour was changing 1 minute. And then we found out that it had to do with the sun. It was the electromagnetic field from outside, and the crystal form in the water could pick it up and transformed already the plant. And we saw the same with new moon, whereby there was an explosion of energy in the plant and in the seeds, only due to the fact that water was there. So that is why we found out that water can really respond to extremely low voltage of electromagnetic fields, and it is very sensitive. It works on that level, and it can hold that.
So you talked about structuring water, and earlier you spoke about photons.
Yeah.
Could you share more details about water and light and the photon energy in water and the importance of that, and how can we create that or recreate that just like nature does?
Water responds constantly to light, and that is very important. The light from the sun and the moon and from other cosmical events are playing a critical role in that. As a matter of fact, if you really want to create very stable water, you have to understand how the moon is working. So if you really want to create stable water, it can take you a year because you have to go through all kinds of cycles. And it holds it in its memory. What did we measure with the biophotons? Biophotons are the effect that we could measure in, for instance, biological systems, but we use it most often in humans, animals, and in plants. Plants was the easiest way because there you could see a very fast response. But if you, for instance, if you have biophotons, that is the light that we transmit, and it is so sensitive. And our cameras had the ability to measure that light on 20-mile difference. And then we could look to the flickering of a candlelight. And we measured that light, and that is the light that we constantly beam, constantly. If you are losing the biophotons, then you have a leakage into your body, and then there is an illness. But you can see that there is a certain density of incredible strong light forms. And we had, with our cameras, we could see exactly. And we could also measure the increase of power when somebody was drinking the right water, because it had a direct effect upon its brains as well. And the brains are not so, it's not so crazy because the brains are the most liquid form into your body. So if you drink a glass like what Isabel just did, I can promise you within a few seconds, it had an effect on the brain.
That could take us down a very deep hole in talking about that. So let's just go there and talk about the water and how the water we drink affects our bodies and our health and our well-being, and how it is so directly tied to whether we're healthy or we're not. And not focusing on the negatives, but as an example, the preponderance now for mental disease, Alzheimer's and dementia that has increased so dramatically. What's water's role?
Okay, very important. And it's a very critical question at this moment of time. What we have seen in our test, and we are testing now all over the world by independent universities and hospitals, et cetera. I'll give you one example of what we just did in India. We had a huge number of people, and we gave them two types of water, structured water and unstructured water. And it was mineral water, and the mineral water that was structured due to a device. And we asked them simply to take the food that they normally take and drink, but they only had to take 3 glasses of water a day. And then we measured into the cells the effect of ATP, which is the energy layer. But the ATP is very much connected to your mitochondria. And the mitochondria are, in each cell, you have around between 500 to 2,000 types of mitochondria. They are the one that gives you the energy. What we saw is that if you give people coherent water, the ATP was increasing. You cannot swallow ATP from outside. It must come from inside. So what was the outcome? Water is suddenly communicating in a much better way in its function. And it had also a direct effect upon a very important nerve center called the nervus vagus. The nervus vagus is coming straight from your intestine to the brain. And what we do know now is that Alzheimer, but also Parkinson's disease, is for a great part dependent upon the toxins that we are taking into our body and is coming from the lack of the right bacteria in our intestine. And what we saw is that if you drink the right water, then suddenly the food you absorb, especially the vegetables, with the right water, there is a much bigger chance that you have an increase in the diversity of the bacteria. So the bacteria are constantly in communication with the water you drink, and then your intestine is giving the right signal to your brain, and that is very much dependent upon the water we drink. So the water has a direct effect, and it is, let's face reality, we have 99% water molecules, but when we go to the doctor for that 1%. That's strange.
Yeah, we've got it backwards.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a very strange democracy.
Yeah. So I'm still on the thread of technology because of your expertise and your prowess with technology. And when we look at the world we're in today, as we're doing now, we're connected through this medium that is waves, energy and electromagnetic waves. We all never think about it. We don't question it. It just works. And I'm wondering how you can relate that to how water just works. And because, as you said earlier, a lot of scientists will debunk things about water because you can't, show it. So I wonder how you can relate that, please.
We do that constantly with tests, constantly on biological systems. Very often we take out the human tests because then we have the ego in between. So we use it very often on animals or on plants. And then we have a huge diversity on plants, also in different soil types. So we give them different types of water, and then we start to measure it from a chemical point of view, an energetic point of view, and all the other stuff that we can measure. Also the DNA nowadays. What we don't understand, and that is why water is so important, we don't understand that water absorbs all the electromagnetic waves, including our brain waves. They are also electromagnetic waves. Our thoughts have an electromagnetic wave that has an effect on the water. But nowadays we create an incredible layer all over the world with electromagnetic waves in the form of 4 and 5G. And that is something we have measured as well. And what we see is that immediately then the bacteria that is in the water respond to that. Because if you constantly beam the same frequency all over the world, then you get a shift into the energy layers of those bacteria that respond positive or negative to it. So you can get even a complete climate change due to this. And your previous speaker, Mr. Cousteau, told us about the cycle in the oceans of the plankton and everything. That is all there because there is water, and that water is constantly under the impact of the normal electromagnetic fields from Mother Nature. We don't understand, and we have to learn it very fast, that everything they do has an effect upon nature. And we have to respect this element much more because this is one of the most sensitive elements that we have.
No surprise that we've got the weather patterns we've got on the planet today, which I think is more aptly called global weirding. and places that have been traditionally dry or wet, and places that were wet or dry, and everything is shifting and changing so dramatically. It brings me to have us talk about AI, where it's now the in vogue topic. As a matter of fact, there's at least one person, Dr. James Doty, who sent his AI to be his present with us here, and at some point may respond or record. So it'll be interesting what we hear from James's AI assistant. So you've been around AI. Let's talk about that, because just the words itself, artificial intelligence, is a misnomer. I would prefer to be involved with natural instead of artificial intelligence. So please give us some perspective of this historically about how really AI developed. And it was, what, 20 years ago that you were involved?
30 years ago. We were the first in the world who built a huge application for one of the big airlines industry. And what we did at that moment of time, we did it together with, well, first of all, we did it in our team. And later on, we trained the people in San Jose laboratory. That is one of the biggest database laboratories in the world, next to Oracle. We trained them how we did it. The artificial intelligence is artificial because you have to write a program. It's not our brain, you have to write a program. That's the artificial part of it. But it is based upon the fact that you have to find patterns. And you need a lot of data. I want to keep it very simple, but if you have a lot of data, you can collect it, and with specific algorithms, you can match all the data with each other. And then you can find what we call the hidden patterns. Normally, you can find them in a mathematical way, but with the artificial intelligence, you could do it via a computer system. As a matter of fact, we had a big sailing ship, and we sailed it with artificial intelligence over the ocean. Yes, we built our own sensors, and we had that ship, and we crossed the ocean completely based upon artificial intelligence, because with artificial intelligence, you can tell the system this is good and this is no good. The whole social media now, the way, in this moment of time, is collecting an incredible amount of data. And then we say, oh, I like it or I dislike it. For people in the artificial intelligence, that is beautiful, because then you tell immediately what's good or what ain't good. And then you can also predict, because that was what we found already 30 years ago, it is extremely simple to predict the behavior of human beings. Mm-hmm. And your former President Trump used the data, and he brought it to the UK, and there he did a run every time, and to see how humans behave upon certain one-liners. And the whole Brexit in the UK was also done by a computer system.
Was that with Cambridge?
Yes, Cambridge technology. They collected the data, and they knew how the emotions of the people worked, and they could influence it. So if you move in that direction, then you're going to influence the whole society. The biggest danger now with artificial intelligence that is coming up is that it can create also at a certain level its own algorithms. Normally you create algorithms and you know what it does, but if it is going to start to create its own algorithms, then you can get into a serious new position, because then you don't know how we can respond. And especially if you're going to connect this to huge databases, including the databases of nuclear power plants and other critical items, then you have to be very careful. You really have to know what is the limit and where to use it and where don't to use it. But this is all I wanted to say about artificial intelligence. Otherwise, it becomes too technical, I think.
Yes, thank you. Well, let's look at artificial intelligence and water.
Yes.
How are you seeing, and how do you envision artificial intelligence being deployed in a beneficial way for our water solutions?
I think it is very good that we are going to collect data also in the world of the water research, because there are some very important scientists, people like Luc Montagnier, but also in the US, a lot of fantastic people like Jerry Pollack. And if we can collect the data together, then we probably can find within 1 or 2 years some major solutions upon what water can do. As a matter of fact, there are already teams at universities that I meet on a monthly basis that do things with water that are completely amazing, really amazing. Mm-hmm. And we first want to test it and test it. But if we can bring that together, then we first of all have a much better understanding how water works, but also we hopefully get more respect for Mother Nature and the incredible knowledge that is behind the water. Because water ain't water, it has a consciousness.
Yeah, we have been seeing at water, all of our water investment sides with our HydroDAO and our Hydro Fund, very unique applications with, quote, AI with water. And what we've seen is that, as you've said, we know about that much about water, yet as we get more and more data, AI learns and gets smarter and can expand it to be maybe that much about water.
That's it. That's it. But I think it's time to do it now. We shouldn't wait a decade. We should do it now. That's much more important. So discussions like this are very critical.
Well, I want to invite our community with any questions that you have. If you want to put them in the chat, I know Dolf would be happy to answer them and engage in this, deeper discussion together. I think I'd love for us now to be able to take some time to connect with each other, as Isabel so beautifully sang the song of water. We'd like to have you each come into a place when you come together to look at that intimacy of water, the secrets of water. And so I invite you to become vulnerable and open your hearts and find that the connection that you have with water and how precious that is, and share that with each other. And so we'll have 15 minutes together with each other. And then once we're done with that 15 minutes, we'll all come back together and we'll see where the water takes us. So you'll be given a prompt here to join a room. And Didier, if you have any of those images you just want to bring up as people are being brought to their rooms together.
I'll show you first.
These are images that Didier asked for AI to share about how AI experienced water, from loving water and valuing water. So please gaze upon these magnificent images of water and see how those may inspire you. And we'll all come back together soon. Okay, great. So I'd love to just follow up on what the thread that you were talking about, Robert, about sequestering of carbon and soil and plant life. And Dolf, if you could share more insights about that as well.
Good. But I'm really very. I hope that Robert can start with it, because
okay,
he has a lot of knowledge.
I'd like to just start because I wasn't able to tell Keisha I couldn't remember the scientist's name who did an important video for all of you to see, or presentation called Habitat Crisis. And the person, or the scientist and professor at Caltech, August Dunning, August like the month, and Dunning, D-U-N-N-I-G, Habitat Crisis, is simply a brilliant presentation that involves the soil and its responsibility in our health and the incidence of chronic disease, etc. So everybody should watch that, the Habitat Crisis by August Dunning. And there is, and everyone, absolutely everyone from 10 years old on up should watch the phenomenal presentation, Kiss the Ground, okay? This is an eye-opener, and really it started off, I think, or publicizing this connection between soil microbes, which we have basically killed off with 100 years of modern farming, from mechanical farming to chemical fertilizers to poisons we put on them, glyphosate and pesticides and herbicides. And that has killed the soil microbes, and we have to then add more chemicals and more fertilizers, et cetera, et cetera. And this was all instigated by Keisha telling me she was responsible for the runoff into one of our famous, I can't remember the city, one of the famous bays, and it's polluting it and so on. So this Kiss the Ground helps connect the dots between soil microbes and the uptake of CO2, which is one of the primary instigators in global warming, etc.
Thank you, Robert. Dolf, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I fully agree with him. I can give a little bit feedback upon this topic because I'm very much involved in it. I can really recommend the documentary Kiss the Ground. And some of those people that have made this documentary, I met several times, and I speak with him for the last 2 years now. I'll tell you a little bit background so that you have a clear understanding upon what Robert was telling you. Into the soil, there are billions and billions of bacteria. Without them, no life, nothing, forget it. As a matter of fact, our body exists out of 7 kilos out of bacteria. Our whole body, without them in your intestine, over and out within a second. The same is happening in the soil. But due to the toxins that we have used over the decades, we have killed some of the most important bacteria. And those bacteria, together with the fungi, are bringing back the CO2 from the air, and they bring it back into the soil, to the roots where it belongs, to let the plant grow. But then you need those bacteria. And what's happening now? We kill them. And everybody is talking about the CO2 that is still in the air, but how to get it out of the air and bring it back into the soil? Well, due to the right bacteria. And what's happening now? If you use polluted water, then those bacteria can't grow. So what we have done in test over the last 2 years, and we are still working on it, we have seen, can you use water? And we have used also the water with the wand that I've seen a lot of people are familiar with. We have used that water and we brought it back to the soil. And what happened? Within 3-4 months, the DNA of the soil changed dramatically. There was suddenly more variety. So water is very critical, and that has an effect, direct effect upon our weather pattern. So what Robert is saying is absolutely right.
So speak more about the water patterns being changed by, well, it's probably the electromechanical field that is being so deeply impacted. And I know you have so much experience and knowledge in that area.
Now, what's happening is that if you have the right soil and you have the right vegetables and plants and especially trees, then there is a direct connection with the atmosphere. Then you see rain is coming in. There is an electromagnetic field between the soil and the cosmos. That is why we are now planting on many places in the desert trees, so that there is a certain cycle coming in that has to do everything with electromagnetic waves. But these are extremely sensitive waves. If we are going to bring in those electromagnetic waves all around the globe, and that is, if you ask me, what is your biggest concern? Because I'm an optimistic man, but there is also one concern. And it is, at this moment of time, there are 4,000 satellites around the world that are beaming telco communication frequencies. That number will increase in 5 years to 100,000. I give you a little bit idea what that means. It means that a complete ring around the world with electromagnetic fields will be there. They beam through the clouds, and the clouds will get this absorption of these sensitive electromagnetic fields, and then the rain will drop upon this planet, and it has to give us our harvest. It is really becoming a big problem, and that is why in many laboratories all over the world we do these tests now. And what we have seen is that extremely harmful bacteria, they love this 4 and 5G. They adore it. And normally 5G, you have it into this big city because there you have the crowds, etc. But if we beam it from the clouds through the whole planet, they have a completely different problem because then nothing can hide. No river, no lake, no sea, no ocean, nothing can hide anymore. And that is why these discussions upon electromagnetic fields and the soil and the weather is highly critical because we only have a few years left to change this and to avoid that this is going to happen. Because I tell you the outcome is that we don't have a normal food pattern anymore.
Because the weather patterns are changing so dramatically.
Not only that, the soil is going to change.
Dolf and everyone, I cannot impress upon you enough what Dolf is saying. The higher frequency and higher energy microwave communications that are coming upon us in an incredible way, including your beloved cell phones, this has to change, or humanity, this alone, forget viruses, forget anything, just this alone, this silent thing we love and use every minute of every day is enough to do humanity in. Okay, and the more advanced the culture, the more we're using this, and people live and even sleep with their cell phones. You cannot do this now with these high energy microwaves. And I study this, I lecture on it, etc. But this is the bane of humanity, these high energy frequencies. And I hope somebody comes up with a replacement, such as maybe the Dolf scalar waves or something, as a different form of communication rather than microwaves.
Yeah. So let's talk about what are the solutions, because as Dolf, you've said, the process is already in play for all these satellites to be launched. And, Elon this is one of his, big agendas. So what
signals? Smoke signals.
But we also stop at smoking, Robert.
Good. Dolf, do you have some?
Yeah, well, there are some things that can be tested, probably because especially we beam only with a specific type of frequencies. 5G, by the way, is not one frequency, it's more than one. It depends upon the wave. And the problem is, because let's first talk about the problems, we haven't got a clue what those waves are also doing in 4G and 5G when they merge, and you can get a complete roller coaster of things that have never taken place before. So in that respect, it's good. I think we have to understand much better how frequencies work on water. And that is why this is very important. Then we get a much better understanding upon the frequencies that we can use or use temporary and then switch over to different types of frequencies. That is probably one of the solutions. And I think we should stop with that idea of Mr. Musk, because he wants the beauty is that what he's saying is that he wants to save the world by giving everybody internet. That's the beauty of the marketing. The reality is just the other way.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I recommend the author and scientist who did studies from the 60s on microwave energies and its health effects. And his name is Barry, Barrie Trower, Trower. It is the most scathing indictment of microwave communication frequencies, etc., and EMF that I have ever read. And don't advertise this because you will be acted against by just promoting this. So take it in for yourself, spread the word, and make people give people access to Barry Trower's studies.
Robert, what do you think about Arthur Furstenberg's work with the...
Magnificent, also magnificent, but Barry Trower's are the most feared because they really, before people even thought about cell phones in the 60s, he was saying, this is the most dangerous stuff I've ever seen at the cellular level.
Yeah, do you remember Arthur? It's called The Invisible Rainbow, A History of Electricity and Life.
Yes,
excellent. It's a heady book. It's very, very, very dense, yet
fantastic.
Yeah, pretty extraordinary. So Dolf, you and Robert were talking about the soil and the impact on soil and all of the life in soil from these waves. What about the oceans? What is the impact?
Yeah, that can be incredible. Your previous speaker talked about the impact of the CO2 absorption by the oceans, and it has to do with only the plankton and the cells that are constantly there into the ocean. I'm wondering what is going to happen if we're going to kill them or change them. Because we forgot constantly that we are in a world whereby everything is working together. And strange enough, when you go to school, you only learn mathematics and biology, how things are mentioned, but we don't learn how all those things work together and how dependent we are.
Yes.
And I hope that this is going to change soon. So you work with a lot of young people. I hope that they start to understand that we are not alone. We are part of a complete infrastructure, but the only thing we do is kill them. Mm. And if we are going to kill this ocean or change the bacteria into the ocean, then I can tell you one thing, weather will change.
Yeah.
And not only that, Stuart, we will change as well. Don't forget that our resistance into our body is completely dependent upon the bacteria. And the bacteria, they need our water in a complete electromagnetic balance. So all kinds of viruses and diseases can come up, even viruses that we just had a few years ago, they can come up and grow dramatically if you put in the right frequencies.
Mm. Yeah. Well, there's so much that is in the unseen world that is happening, that is in the energy frequency photon world. And there's an opportunity for us to consider that, which I know is the central point of your work, Dolf. So what are you most optimistic about? How do we...
I'm very optimistic about the fact that people, like this whole group, is speaking to each other, no matter the race, where you come from, male, female, open-minded people that say, hey, we have to change it. And we have the knowledge to do it as well. And for instance, we have now this water, this stable water, and we've seen the effects. And if we can prove that to the world, then I do know that young people, they will bring it forward. So the things you do, bring it to the right people. Then let's do tests all over the world and show it to the United Nations, what's happening, and to other groups. I meet so many people all over the world. So many people are willing to change this planet. And I think that that is why I'm an optimistic fan.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, we have to be optimistic, one, because our thoughts create our outcome and our future. And two, if we just complain and just say what's wrong with everything, then we're not going to change anything. And as you said, I so strongly feel and have experienced that the youth have a sense of stewardship for the planet and for each other. And they don't have this lens of judging others. As you said, we're just one, and they see we're just one species and we're one planet. And ultimately, we are one water. It's all one water, and we are the water beings. So we're all connected in this amazing way, and this magic and mystery. And as Isabel said, there's all these secrets. Well, let's discover secrets, and let's share secrets, and let's create these solutions that is one, most importantly, it's keeping us alive and surviving. But it's also for our joy. I mean, we're here to be in joy and to appreciate this magnificent nature and all the gifts that nature gives us every single moment of every single day. What a gift and what a blessing. Yeah. Anyone else have any either questions or comments before we depart today? And no?
I do. Can you hear me? It's Gina.
Oh, Gina, yes, please.
Hi,
I thought you were just waving goodbye.
Yeah, no, not at all. I'm glad to have your attention and the floor for a second. Gina Bria from the Hydration Foundation. Dolf, I have a question, which is, how can we support changing the frequencies that are detrimental to the microbes and the soils and our oceans and us to positive frequencies? I think that for me is a very hopeful thought, and I'm trying to find people who can help us, instead of putting more satellites up, just change the frequencies that are we're using now that are detrimental into beneficial ones. Do you know anybody who's doing research like that?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I speak quite often with these people. One of the things, and then we go back to water, Gina. Mm-hmm. Not all the waters in the world have the ability to make that communication again, because you talk about more or less the communication with quantum fields, with the ether fields. And not all the water. So if you have the right water, if you have stable water, because I start to believe also that from a scientific point of view, we start to understand that we have to change it, but there must be a complete paradigm shift. Because at the very beginning, Stuart also mentioned that he knows people that really are working from a distance, and they bring that information system, because that is what it is about, an information system, to the soil. And it would be fantastic if we can do with a lot of people, test around this and show it to the rest of the world. And I'm optimistic that this will have really profound outcomes. So I'm looking forward to that, Gina.
Yeah, you switched the conversation for me, because suddenly, instead of electromagnetic fields coming down, the possibility of water being the electromagnetic field that lifts up is, you just changed my mind. Thank you.
Well, easier. Hold on. That's not quite what he said, but easier said than done, because we are in fact live in a multi fields, electric fields, magnetic fields, etc. And it's not just changing the frequency, it may be change. Remember, these frequencies we're talking about have an electric and a magnetic component. That's what EMF means. And so it's not just, oh, we won't use 18 gigahertz, we'll use 24 gigahertz, et cetera, but there's scant research on, except for Rife himself in the 30s, there's scant research done on what fields might be healthful and help our health. So there's a lot of work that has to be done in that area. It's very, very complicated. And so there's not going to be a simple solution, Gina.
No, but whatever we got, we can help you spread the good news.
Cool. Thank you.
Stay together, Robert.
Well,
there's also one solution that's being implemented, at least it's somewhat beneficial on a small scale. Although I don't think that it is, I do think it's a Band-Aid solution. I don't think it is the solution, but a lot of people are becoming what they're calling rogue orgone donors. So when you create a stronger field of orgone energy in a particular area, not only does that help to cohere the water and the ecosystem in that area, but it's also being used against HARP and 5G and different geoengineering things that are happening in the environment. So a lot of people are planting Wilhelm Reich's orgonite and little orgone generators at the foot of 5G towers. And I think we need a lot more research into how effective that is. We need to be able to quantify it, but you can see, at least from the work of Dr. James DeMeo and some others who were implementing this really effectively, that they were even able to bring the rain back to certain areas that, due to geoengineering, had become more desertified. So I'm not saying that it's necessarily a way to completely mitigate all of the 5G radiation, especially if it starts being beamed from satellites, but at least insofar as it's coming from towers, if there is enough orgonite in the area, it could help with that. And then there are ways to make the water itself more, just make the water itself store more orgone and become like a liquid orgonite. So again, it's just a Band-Aid, and who knows how ultimately how effective it really is, but it's one thing that's being implemented.
Yeah. On that thread, Isabel, there's a company that's here in the Bay Area called Upterra, UPTERRA, that is the most advanced technological company that I've seen and working with, and we've invested in, that is using radionic technology and scalar wave technology to imbue frequencies that is received by the water, and then the message is sent out from the water with these frequencies. That is a complete game changer and has already, it's in the field, it's working. They've focused on the soil and growing food as their foundational application for this. And they have seen that by imbuing specific frequencies, that one, they're really asking the soil or the plants, what does it want? What does it require? And then they get those answers, and then they deliver that to them and see what is the effect it has. And it's been just extraordinary to see the changes that occur and the enhancement that occurs. And then they've had this whole new world of being able to look at, I'll call it the insect and the pests of this world, and to be able to find ways to once again, know what is their frequency, and to send them frequencies that have them receive these messages that say, oh, we shouldn't have more babies here, or this is not an environment for us to live in, so we're going to go elsewhere. So it's not destroying them and killing them and affecting the cycle of life and the ecosystem. It's just having them find another place to go. So Upterra has technologies that I believe are going to be some of the biggest shifts and changes that occur, that bring us back into this natural system and creating balance and harmony with all of the frequencies.
What is the name, Stuart? Upterra?
Yeah, UPTERRA. And they're the group, actually, they have the Analemma wand and are using the Analemma wand. And yeah, I'd love to introduce you to them, because they have some studies and results of showing how the Analemma wand works with some of the crops and plants and all that they're doing. And yeah, when you see the technology this company has, it's actually not from this world. It's from another world and another dimension. It's so advanced and extraordinary.
Good.
I agree. I advised Keisha on looking into Upterra as well.
anything else anyone wants to talk about before we depart? And so thank you each for your contribution, and looking forward to our next time together. And welcome any comments you have, any feedback you have, and engagement that you have with us through what we're now calling our HydroDAO community. And if you all are not on our weekly list to get our weekly dive, please let us know, because we'll make sure that you get that. And let's bring more people into this community, whether they're people like us that are in tune and get this, or others that are new to this. And let's begin to engage them and hear them and feel them and have empathy for what their issues are, as Dolf said, to understand them from their own perspective, so we can engage with them and we can all elevate, lift all boats to that rising tide.
Thank you for bringing us together, Stuart. And thank you to Dolf.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you, Stuart.